joining us. We're very excited to talk about Gideon, of course, and we're very excited to get to know you through the chat and the question and answer area later. So I guess I'll start out by kind of introducing who I am, since I'm very sure that I don't really know any of you and you probably don't recognize me. My name is Kim Hazel. I am currently heading up all of the kind of marketing and communications right now with Gideon. I am actually getting my MPH. I literally graduate in 4 days. So I will have my MPH in epidemiology at the end of this week, which is really awesome. And I'm just really excited to see kind of how Gideon keeps growing and what we have going on and all that great stuff. I'd also like to introduce you guys to Armano, who is kind of my counterpoint and also one of the most wonderful people I've ever gotten to work with, who is our global customer success manager. And he's going to be heading up a lot of this webinar today and speaking with you guys about a lot of really awesome things that you could do with Gideon that you might not have known about. So without further ado, I will let us get started. Friendly reminder for any of you just joining, there is a chat function and a Q&A function available during this session. So you can go ahead and type in the chat or type directly in the question and answer. If you have a burning question, just make a note that it is something that you have burning related to the topic that Armano is speaking about at the time, and I will read it out when there is a good opening. Otherwise, we will be saving all the questions for a question and answer session at the end. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Armano, who is going to take it away for us.
Well, thank you, Kim. Hello, everyone. Again, warm welcome from Dublin. As Kim said, I'm a Global Customer Success Manager. I'll be looking forward to show you a couple of things you can do with Gideon here. And we are going to dive into quick agenda. So we will have 10 topics today that we are going to go over. And the first one will start with to compare COVID-19 stats between different regions. And you are going to see now the quick poll when I will be switching into the Gideon environment. Please take this poll to vote or to select what do you think, what region will be highest in the COVID-19 rates per 100,000. And for this to discover, we will go into our quantify module. We will be going through all of these modules, but first now on the agenda will be the quantify one, where we can discover the data that we are looking for by simply typing in the disease that we are looking for. So I will type in COVID-19, I will select worldwide, and I will select the regions that you are seeing now into the poll. I will also specify, Americans region, Europe region, African region, 0%. Cool. Okay, let's see. Western Pacific, Eastern Mediterranean. Cool. I'm just reshuffling a little bit this poll around. Okay, so I will choose the rates per 100,000 for African region. I will do the same for Americans region. Here, I will do this for Eastern Mediterranean region. Same will be for Europe region. Southern Eastern Asia region, Western Pacific region, and that's it. So now we have all 6 of those, and I can generate the chart, and we are going to see different colors correlating to different regions. So we can see the red one or the green one has significantly increased from 2020 to 2021, and that is the European region that now is the highest. And we can see, well, some of you were close there, 20%, amazing, well done, well done. The other percent, 80% of the other ones were really close, as we can see in the rates per 100,000. We are talking about the number of 6,316.29. And here we talk about 7,473.72. Well, cool. You can also view this data in, let me just move this, in the data table as well, where we can see the numbers in rates per 100,000. Everything can be easily downloaded, and you can share this with your friends and colleagues. Cool. Now, what we are going to do, we are going to go into the review global outbreaks in the year of 1906. And how I'm going to do this is by going into the Explore module and selecting countries, and I will go into a specific year of interest. So for example, I could have chosen 1981 because that was a really, I passed it one. 1981 was a really good year for a lot of outbreaks, specifically in US and Europe. But there is an interesting story, and probably most of you know that. For some of you that don't know, it would be a very interesting tale of 1906 about the Irish lady who emigrated to United States and caused a havoc in around the New York area, where so basically we are talking about Mary Malone. She was called also Typhoid Mary, that emigrated in the United States in 1884, and then she was working in a variety of different domestic positions and in the kitchens as a cook, which contributed to quite a big, huge spread of the infection itself. And Kim, if you want, you can feel free to pitch in, and I will show you how this is recorded in GIDEON for typhoid and enteric fever in the United States.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about Typhoid Mary as a case and as just a case study in general is that she was informed that she was in fact kind of the epicenter of this spread. And upon hearing that, she pretty much was like, well, I'm healthy, that can't be possible. And she was so convinced that it wasn't her doing it and that it wasn't related to how she was taking care of herself or others or anything like that, that she continued to spread it. And there became a huge medical ethics discussion around, can we force someone into isolation against their will, and how do we do it, and is that okay? And so this was a huge case study in medical ethics, and still is to this day, about how do we handle that and where do we handle it. And she was actually fairly old when she died, but she was still in isolation when it happened.
And also in that year, particularly in that year, we can see that there was over 9,000 outbreaks of that same disease. So it was quite outbreak that Mary caused in that year. And we know then, since there was no cure, it was like 10% mortality rate. So it really speaks volumes about each of us being disciplined and taking ownership of the health and the stopping of the spread. So now the third topic will be the compare stomach bugs side by side. The easiest way, since I'm not the epidemiologist, I don't have a medical background, unfortunately, is to go into this beautiful diagnose interactive module where I can choose step-by-step approach, and I will choose the stomach area where I can see and select certain clinical findings, such, for example, diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain. And what this will give me through our Bayesian analysis, certain types of diseases that are present or likelihood of them being present compared to those symptoms. And now I can simply click on this little plus icon, and I am adding them to the comparison table. So where the comparison table is, it's little here, the little light bulb. If I click it here, I can then search through clinical findings, what is always, for example, present in Shigellosis and usually or maybe not present in Salmonellosis or rotavirus infection. I could go through this list in quite of details. Of course, we can see this not just with words, but also with percentages where obviously always is not 100%, usually it's 95% and so on. There is an interesting fingerprint as well comparison section where we can see what agents is causing what infectious disease, what is the reservoir, the vector, or the vehicle. And again, we will have a short summary for each disease where you can see here for Shigellosis and Salmonellosis and rotavirus infection. So it is a really nice way of summarizing the main differences connected to those infectious diseases. Cool. And now there is a test for me. Hopefully this was interesting. Interesting. Now in the lab section, we are able to identify different pathogens. And I will go into the decision tree, and the title of our next topic is create a decision tree to identify MRSA or staph in 10 seconds or less. So Kim, feel free to start your clock on my mark. Ready, set, go, and I can see if I'm able to produce that under 10 seconds. Now, bear with me. And I will have a display of text. Oh, I got it, 99%. What is the time?
There was a little lag on my end, so I ended up at 13 seconds. But I think if I didn't have laggy internet, it probably would have been right there.
Practice makes perfect, so I'll try faster next time. And we can see this in the expand mode here. I can also download this, which shows really nicely. And let me just check. Let's see. And at the end, we can share this with you. How it looks like in the PDF form. You can always open the preview here again, so you can see how different pathogens are moving around depending on what test you are doing. And now I'm basically passing on to Kim, the conduct systemic review with help of GIDEON.
Yes, so being a researcher and an epidemiologist, I love just being able to do reviews and having access to really awesome quality references and things like that. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate or know people that have that same kind of passion. So one of the wonderful things about GIDEON, and that I really loved, especially as a student in the field of public health, was that GIDEON actually links out to all of its references. So we have a reference bank of over 270,000 references, and we link out to all of them. So if you go to a disease note or a country note, and you're looking at some of that data and you're thinking that's really awesome, and I would love to include that in my own review, well, you can include it, and GIDEON is considered a gray literature source for a lot of systematic reviews, but you can even go a step further, and you can scroll down, you can click our references area and actually read abstracts for these references and choose which ones you actually want to look at, which would then give you more primary sources and secondary sources. This is especially great for students because students actually have a hard time determining what's good and what might not be so good of literature to include. And all of our stuff is actually already been vetted by our medical team. So you know that your students are going to be looking at quality studies. So it can kind of help them piece some things together and figure out what things they should or should not include based on what's in GIDEON alone. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for systematic reviews. I don't know if you want to take us to my favorite point.
Yeah, we'll go into find out how anthrax was used for bioterrorism and warfare since 1915. So here I will search the specific disease in question. So I can just type in first couple of letters and it will give me this option. Now, bear in mind, not all infectious diseases will have this note, only the bioterror one. So if I click here, we can see all the bioterror note there is on anthrax. So anthrax as an agent of bioterrorism, bioterrorism potential, exposure scenario, and then the chronology. And as Kim mentioned, everything is referenced here. Or if you want to check, view all of the references that are in this article. So we can see it was started to use in 1915 with Germans against the United States. And then there was quite a big incident in the United States that Kim has more knowledge of, which we can see here in 2001.
Yes, so kind of have, I guess, a weird morbid passion for bioterror and just agents of bioterror in general, and anthrax more specifically. So interesting things about anthrax is that its ancient origins actually date back to 700 BC. So it has been around for basically ever in the grand scheme of things, but the first clinical description and presentation of anthrax was actually in 1752, and then we started to see some anthrax vaccines coming out in the late 1800s. So it's been around, and it's been an infectious disease, and it's been on everybody's radar, but it wasn't really considered to be bioterror until what's considered to be in recent history, honestly. And so, as Armando was saying, this anthrax by male, or the Amerithrax attack, actually really shook things up in the world of bioterror. And if you consider just even the way Hollywood and pop culture views bioterror, I'm sure that a lot of you can remember the huge push that there was about the anthrax apocalypse throughout Hollywood, and every movie that had to do with any type of infectious disease was in fact using anthrax as their agent. So during this attack, there was actually powdered spores that were sent via the US Postal Service to a variety of different places, from senators' offices to news agencies to actual post offices. That way, when they opened, they would spread the spores onto other parcels. And because of that, there was a lot of incidents of anthrax infection that were actually seen, but it actually went completely unnoticed until October of 2001. So there was a window of time in which this was happening and no one really knew. So once they started to figure it out, they realized that 10,000 people had been at risk of exposure. 43 were confirmed to be exposed, 22 were ill, and 5 had actually died. So because of this Amerithrax attack, the FBI and some of our other federal entities here in the United States actually started a long-term investigation that didn't end until 2010. And throughout that investigation, they actually found that some of the reason that this even happened is that the person that did it was working on trying to create a vaccine and type of vaccination protocol for the event of a bioterror attack, and had been denied and kind of discredited. And they took it very personally. So that led them to kind of be like, well, I'll show you. And they sent that out to the broader American public, which led to a huge obsession and bioterror for a lot of people my age that are now young adults and studying things like this have just had a morbid fascination with it ever since. So that's part of why this one's just my favorite to talk about. So if you have any questions about anthrax and want to talk about it more, feel free to let me know in the chat.
Cool. Thank you very much, Kim, for that. And you can also email this PDF to your friend or a colleague to open up a nice conversation over lunch. So I'm going back to the GIDEON main interface, and we are going to have another poll where we are going to discuss the largest recorded outbreak of gonorrhea. So feel free to leave your input into this poll, and we are going to explore to see what the country will be in question. Oh, United States, 33%, United Kingdom, 33%, and then South Africa is 33%. Oh, very even. Cool. Well, I would definitely say United Kingdom as well. And then let's go into the outbreaks map. So now what we are going to do, we can see the representation and the endemicity level. We can see that it is endemic to all of the countries. And there are a couple of outbreaks going on now, but I'm going to go into the list of all outbreaks and I will order them by number of cases. And we can see that the winner is Australia, that nobody chose, which is surprising. And we can go into the record itself. And funny enough, the outbreak of sexually transmitted infection is rapidly spreading through Melbourne's suburbs, outer suburbs, and the scientists are a bit baffled to understand why that is so. We did have a debate whether koalas were the main culprits for that, but there is a fun fact that Kim can share with you around that.
Yeah, so it turns out koalas and some other animals native to Australia can actually spread both gonorrhea and chlamydia from their skin. So that is something that they jokingly talk about koalas with, as well as drop bears, for anybody that's familiar with anything Australian or Australian culture related. My in-laws are all Australian, so I get to hear a lot of that good stuff. But there is also something to be said for the fact that everyone is still in lockdown, so there's not a lot to do right now, and that could definitely be part of the spread as well.
Cool, thank you for that. And here is the other, again, fact that you can see in the notable outbreaks, and with the reference as well, we can see there is always 13,500 cases that is estimated here. And now I can click on this button, and we are going to go into one of my favorite features or functionalities within Gideon, and this is prevention of introduction of monkeypox into the United States. And this was the real case back in July 15th of 2021, when an imported case of a monkeypox was confirmed in Texas. Hopefully, symptoms were presented early and the patient did not interact with many people that prevented human-to-human transmission. Usually the reported case fatality rate for this disease is between 10 to 15, which is pretty terrible and much higher than COVID. So our patient is adult living in United States. I will select all my known information here, and through Bayesian analysis, we are going to see the probability. So obviously it will be common cold, COVID, one of the top contenders here. But as I'm inputting certain clinical details or findings like myalgia, I was adding A instead of Y, postulates. And have macules or papules here. Now we can see that the 65% will be the red bite fever for an adult in United States. And this button was developed with the help of World Health Organization to question this differential diagnosis. And by clicking this, we can see that monkeypox is 54% probable. So we can go back to the patient and we can ask them if they traveled somewhere. And funny fact, they did. They were in Nigeria. So I can remove this location and I can add Nigeria right here. And we can see now that monkeypox is 99% probable. And again, what we can do, we can go straight into the disease. We can see the bioterror note. We can add it to the comparison list. So you can now branch out to multiple other options. Hopefully that was really fun. This was really one of my favorites in Gideon. And now for the ninth topic that we have is challenging confirmation bias when diagnosing a patient. So I can simply run a parallel diagnosis, or I can clear this with two buttons. And I can say that I received the patient and that is coughing. So I will input the cough. I'm seeing that he's sneezing, or he has rhinitis, and then he experiencing some chest pain. I can add the chest pain here. So now what we can see that the diseases that are shown here are influenza, parainfluenza virus, respiratory syncytial virus infection, and so on. We have COVID here as well. But what happened with common cold? Now, if I want to question this diagnosis, I can click on this why not button, and I can then scroll through different other diseases that are here, or I can simply type in common cold like this, and the Gideon will show why the common cold is not included in this diagnosis because of the chest pain. So we can ask the patient whether this chest pain is a muscle pain, maybe for working too hard in the gym, or he's really experiencing something in that regard. So this is how you are able to challenge the confirmation bias when diagnosing a patient. And then finally, we will have an interesting feature of how, in a faster way, do the more specific search for infectious diseases. So I'm going to go into the Explore module here, and I will choose the disease that I want to explore, and I will choose the search by fingerprint. And now this really shares the first place with that first case scenario as one of my favorites. Again, so I will go and choose cattle. I'm interested in infectious diseases that are present in cattle that are spreading, or the vehicle is direct physical contact. And I'm interested in a country such as the United States. Now I can see that 10 diseases are matching my search out of 365 diseases. And we can see what those are, such as the anthrax that we spoke about recently, brucellosis, and many other plagues, some very nasty ones. There is another thing that you can search as well, because we all probably, well, I won't say all, we might have some vegans here, but if you like meat, we all know that the favorite meat would probably come from humans, but we would need to understand what are the dangers of that. So I can choose the cannibalism as a vehicle, and we will see the Kuru disease, the one disease that is matching this particular way of getting it. So Kuru is a prion disease. We can see the agent, the reservoir, the vector and vehicle. So the cannibalism, when you're putting somebody on the stake. And then we can see what are the diagnostic tests, what is the typical adult or pediatric therapy, if there is one, clinical hints, like related diseases, different synonyms, and we will have a nice gallery of images and descriptive text here that will accompany that. Also, we will have clinical findings right here. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Let us now go into Q&A, and Kim, let me know if we have any questions.
Yeah, so we did get a couple questions throughout this. And if you have any questions now, feel free to use that raise hand button. And Christina, helping on the back end with the tech support, will be able to allow you to ask a question, or please feel free to type them into the chat or the question and answer section, and we'll be able to read them out. So a couple of the questions that we got were actually in relation to the first point of the day, which was in regards to COVID. So someone asked if we had any 2022 data yet, and the answer to that is that in our outbreak maps, we absolutely do. Those are updated continuously, and so they do have the most up-to-date data. The graphs, however, are updated on an annual basis as soon as that annual data is available from health ministries around the world. Then there was another question about if the rate of COVID was diagnoses in like cases, or if it's by sampling, and it is actually diagnosed cases that were again shared by those health ministries, which is wonderful. So again, if anybody else has any other questions, we would love to hear them. So Bruce is asking, since it's from ministries, what is the reliability? Since it's from ministries, and also we can make it a little less European sounding, it is from other governmental agencies, the reliability is actually quite high. And like all things in our databases, it is thoroughly vetted, and everything is coming from resources that are very, very much so trusted by physicians and some of the world's leading physicians in infectious diseases. So you can definitely trust the data that we're gathering, and that it is going to be quite reliable.
And to add on top of that, we do work closely with World Health Organization, with CDC, with Homeland Security. So those are all the organizations and agencies that are using our GIDEON database for getting data on infectious diseases.
Well, if that's it, as far as questions go, I want to take another second to thank you guys for joining me in Armada this morning. We know that it's quite early for some of you, depending on where you're located, and so we do appreciate you joining us. And again, we hope that you learned something new, that you had a little bit of fun and maybe a chuckle here and there, and that you'll be joining us for our new webinars that we have coming out. We will hope to have some coming up in the coming months, and we would love to see you there. So thank you again for joining us on behalf of all of the GIDEON team. We are grateful to have you, and grateful that you're using GIDEON and changing the world of infectious diseases.